What's going on, everybody? GeoFlux here, and we're back talking about what's happening in society as it pertains to LGBTQIA plus people, transgender folks, etc. So, about 5, 6 weeks ago, June 26, 2025, the U.S. Supreme Court dealt a blow to transgender rights. Um, and I just wanted to cover this. So the decision in the Skrmetti versus U.S. is not the end of the road. We can and must show up for transgender youth in the courts and in our communities. This is being brought to me by ACLU, and links will be in the description box below. So, June 26th, the Supreme Court dealt a devastating blow to trans youth and their families, and the communities that support them. In a 6-3 decision, uh, the Supreme Court ruled in Skrmetti versus U.S. that SB 1, which is Tennessee's ban on gender affirming care for minors, does not illegally discriminate against individuals on the basis of sex or transgender status. This allows Tennessee and other states that may choose to follow its discriminatory lead to ban medically necessary health care for minors. Now, you have to understand, President Trump stacked the courts his first term in 2017. And from the courts, from the U.S. Supreme Courts down to the lower courts, such as your U.S. district courts, um, and circuit, you'd be surprised how many mega supporting judges were elected and or nominated for these positions that they're in. So we have a very conservative, right wing uh, justice system, Supreme Court in the US. Now, when they're talking about, of course, they're going to support policies that support the conservative, Republican, right wing, make America great again, Trump supporting policies, because that's who they're leaning towards. Obviously, in my opinion, when I look at this, it's clearly discriminatory against transgender people, transgender youth, because you're only targeting trans people when it pertains to gender affirming care. Because in the same breath, you will allow a cis male to get top surgery because his breasts are big and he's a cis man or a cis boy or a cis male, and cis males shouldn't have breasts, so therefore you will allow him to get gender affirming care. But if a trans boy, a trans male, a trans man wants to also get gender affirming care and have the same exact procedure, you won't allow it because that person is trans. And the main reason is because they're trans. That is clearly discriminating against a person specifically because of their transgender status. Um, as one of the Tennessee parents challenging this ban put it, quote, the Supreme Court's ruling on Wednesday will make it even harder for our daughter to get life saving health care. It will harm the lawsuits, unnamed families, and those that come after us, with younger kids just starting to understand and express themselves. End of quote. This is a blow for trans youth who simply want to grow up healthy, supported, and seen. It is not, however, where the legal battle ends. Importantly, the Supreme Court limited its ruling to just Tennessee's law. It did not decide on the broader questions about the legality of discrimination against transgender people in other areas. So clearly, we still have options around this, and it is going to end up being largely a state rights argument. And if you notice, that's what Trump mega agenda is to push a lot of things that used to be at the federal level back down to the state for individual states to determine if these are going to be laws, policies, what types of rights and privileges you will be able to access will be largely determined by which state you live in, which further proves my point that this is not a United States. It never was to begin with. And obviously, if states' rights are going to be the focal point, then what is the purpose of the federal government? Oh. Why are we paying federal taxes in the first place if everything is going to be at the state level? Then there's no point in us paying federal income taxes, especially considering that you're taking away everybody's benefits. You're cutting Medicaid, you're cutting Medicare, you're cutting SNAP benefits, you're cutting Social Security, you're cutting the US Department of Education, you're cutting the US Department of Housing and Urban Development. You're cutting all of these programs, but yet you're still expecting us to pay federal taxes. And for what? Not to mention, why should marginalized demographics pay taxes when they don't have adequate representation? Why should we be paying taxes when we don't have any rights? I'm just saying, like, what make it make sense? Taxation without proper representation is what we are currently living in. Okay? So below, the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, breaks down what the court's ruling means for trans youth across the nation, how we can all fight back, and how we can best support ourselves and our communities in this current moment. So, what does the Supreme Court ruling mean for transgender youth and their families? The Supreme Court's ruling does not impact youth in states that have not passed gender affirming care bans. For young people in Tennessee and Kentucky, however, this ruling means that access to medical care that has been deemed essential by every major medical organization will be denied. In states like Indiana, Alabama, and Florida, where courts have upheld similar bans, this ruling may embolden the lawmakers in those particular states and courts in those particular states to let those bans stay in place. So again, it brings it back to the states to decide. This is definitely going to hit financially and economically. And the reason why I say this is you're going to see people are already doing it and have been doing it, but you're going to see more people leaving red states coming into the more blue, left leaning, liberal, progressive, democratic states. They're going to be moving to those states. Um, so economically, places like California and New York, they're going to continue to have more money because more people are going to be living there. But that's more of a tax revenue because you have a bigger population of people. It is what it is. However, that can become detrimental because if you don't have the space and the resources, um, for an influx of people moving to your state, that can become a huge problem. Not to mention California and New York are already not affordable for the vast majority of people. Because let's be real, most folks are working class and middle class, lower to moderate income. And even in places in California and New York, you need more than moderate income to afford to live there. So that's the other dilemma to look into as well. Does Skrmetti limit care for transgender adults? No. This case was specifically about minors in two states, Kentucky and Tennessee. The ruling didn't address an equally powerful claim raised in Skrmetti and other cases that the bans violate the rights of parents to direct their children's medical care. In this case, parents who are legal adults can challenge whether denying their minor child health care is a violation of their rights. That fight continues in the lower courts, including a major case happening in Arkansas where four transgender youth and their families are challenging a similar ban. Which brings me back, it's really wild to me how in the US they're always talking about freedom, yet freedom only seems to be for a very small demographic of people in this country. You have to be white, You have to be heterosexual, you have to be cisgendered, and preferably a white, cisgendered, heterosexual male who is able bodied, meaning you have no mental or physical disabilities, and you better be Christian. You better be Christian. Also, you better have money. You better be wealthy. So that pretty much kicks out over 90%, 90+% of the population. So that's why it's just like, again, most of us don't have any rights or freedoms in this country. Everyone's all about, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as long as you are a white, cisgendered, heterosexual, able-bodied, Christian, Protestant, wealthy, white, cishet male. If you're not, then you don't get to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We see this time and time again. What can states' courts do to protect transgender rights? Through the Supreme Court, or though, I should say, though the Supreme Court did not provide federal level security for trans individuals to seek care at the state level, bans can still be challenged under state constitution and laws, which in some cases offer stronger protections than federal law. This work is already happening in states like Montana, where state courts have blocked gender affirming care bans under state law, and medical care is still accessible. Kansas and Ohio are also challenging bans on gender affirming care in their court systems. I happen to be in the Great Lakes state of Michigan. This is why, when people are talking about elections, elections matter. Elections have consequences. It's not just about the presidential election, it's not just about federal elected positions like your US congressperson or your senator. It's also about your state house representatives, your state senators, your mayors, okay? Your state Supreme Court justices, your state US districts, your circuit courts, every elected position from the local to the state to the federal matter. And again, these are going to be your allies. A lot of your allies are going to be the people that are in your local area, in your state. Okay. So something to think about. Does the Skrmetti ruling impact any of Trump's anti-trans executive orders? No. U.S. versus Skrmetti does not resolve challenges to anti-trans executive orders from the Trump administration. This case was about medical care for transgender minors in 2 states. It does not speak to broader attacks on transgender rights. The ACLU is a nationwide affiliate network, and other LGBTQ rights organizations are challenging many of Trump's attacks on transgender people's rights in healthcare, including his orders restricting our ability to update passports and his order attempting to coerce doctors to drop their transgender patients. I personally have already been a victim of this. So in the state of Michigan, um, we don't have any bans on gender affirming care, but individual doctors are already moving to dropping their transgender patients. And not just their transgender patients, but patients that are on Medicaid, that are on Medicare. Um, if you're low income, if you are low to moderate income, you are a woman, you are trans, yeah, you're gonna see a lot of this happening. So in my particular situation, back in February, my doctor, who I had been seeing for the past 6 years, decided that they were no longer accepting my employer's health insurance plan completely. Then decided that the particular doctor that I go to, not only is the office not accepting my previous insurance plan through my employer, but that particular doctor moved to a direct care model. So unless you're able to pay out of pocket, you can't even see that doctor, which again is not going to be doable for most people because most people are not being paid living wages, let alone enough money to pay individually for doctor appointments. Not to mention, the person set the plan up so you would be paying $400 every quarter, basically. That's what it kind of comes out to, or at least 3 times a year, you would have to come out and pay 400 for a total of 1200, which would give you 12 appointments. And like, however, you could still use your insurance to pay for like your labs or your prescriptions. However, that office isn't even accepting my previous health insurance plan through my employer at all. So I still wouldn't have been able to use it. But you want us to pay 400 essentially every quarter, on top of the fact that when you work for a job, a lot of us have to pay out of pocket for our healthcare insurance plan through our employer. So not only do we have to pay that every 2 weeks, which for me, it went from being like 150 to about 140, because I switched plans and got a new plan. Thank goodness. But so now I got to pay 140 a month plus pay you 400 every 3 months. Plus, we still have to pay for our own copays and deductibles. So you see how this is very expensive and absolutely ridiculous when literally 8 months ago you were accepting insurance. So it's already happening for a lot of us, unfortunately. So how can you support the trans community? Um, Transgender youth deserve to be safe. Okay? They deserve to be safe, loved, and respected everywhere, regardless of which state they live in. You can help by taking action. You can connect with your state ACLU affiliate, okay, the American Civil Liberties Union affiliate, PFLAG, or your local LGBTQ plus organizations. You can support the Trans Youth Emergency Project, which is a nationwide effort by the Campaign for Southern Equality, helping families access care for their children. You can contact members of Congress and demand they stand with transgender people and families, rejecting laws that let politicians dictate our personal health care decisions. Every action, every voice, every ally matters. The fight for transgender lives isn't over, and we need all hands on deck. I mean, and this is why I've been saying for years, you know, we need actions, not words, because a lot of people get on Facebook and social media and, in their own friend groups and talk about how they're allies, but when we look at your action, you don't do anything. You just talk. And it's like, we need more hands on deck. Like, we need to be spreading awareness. We need to be contacting our elected officials at the local, state, and federal level. We need to be running for political offices ourselves instead of thinking that somebody else is going to run to save us. We need to be holding the elected officials that we already have accountable. And if they're not doing their jobs, be prepared to kick their asses out and vote them out. We need to be doing mutual funds. Like, if you can help pay for somebody's health insurance, pay for their appointment, pay for their prescription, if you can just be a listening ear for people, you know, there's various ways to show up for community and support people in your community. Information will be in the description box below, and I have more videos that are going to be coming out, and they're not going to all be fun and go lucky, because we're living in the reality of things. Everything isn't going to be happy and fun. So, more videos to come. Trans youth matter, protect trans kids. Trans men matter, trans women matter. Transgender people in general, our lives matter just as much as cisgender people's lives.